Welcome to the Lindsay Hadley podcast show. I'm coming to you from the North Shore of Oahu, where weekly I interview some of the world's most inspiring people from business, philanthropy, and entertainment. I love collecting humans, and these are some of my favorites I've found along the way. This podcast is brought to us by Capita Financial Network.
Do you need help with the next steps of your financial plan? Think Capita. Capita is a financial network built around you. They have a team of financial advisors, CPAs, estate attorneys, Medicare providers, and Social Security experts to help you accomplish your financial goals. Call or schedule a complimentary consultation at 801-566-5058 or visit their website at capitafinancialnetwork.com. You can also check out their financial education podcast, The Financial Call, available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and YouTube.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Lindsay Hadley podcast show. Today, I'm so pleased to welcome our guest, Ben Moss, on the show. And Ben has an incredible background in real estate. He's going to talk to us a lot about investing and market. And we're going to learn a lot from him. And this is a hot topic and something that most people know. I think there was a quote I heard or statistic that something like 98% of all billionaires made their money in real estate, or some absurd, statistic. And I just know that for me, some of the greatest returns I've ever had have been in real estate, and it's such an exciting vertical and so much to learn, and such an interesting time right now that Ben's going to share with us. So I'm really looking forward to that. Ben's company is called the Ben Moss Group, and then he also works with Compass, which he's going to talk to us a little bit about as well, where he manages clients from the entertainment and sports industries, which is super fun. And so, Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're so thrilled to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Lindsay. I appreciate it. Excited to speak with you today.
Incredible. So, Ben, why don't you start with telling us a little bit about your story? What got you? I'm seeing behind you, you've got sports paraphernalia. Do you have a favorite team and a favorite client? And you can't have favorite clients, right? That's like having a favorite child, but nudge, wink, wink. But do you have a journey that got you here that was unexpected? I'd love to hear it, and how sports and real estate, came together in your life so seamlessly.
Yeah, well, I was actually interning at Merrill Lynch and working at Banco Espírito Santo in college, and I was kind of going down the financial advisory track. And then I went to one of these real estate investment seminars, and I was 17 years old and started knocking on doors. And lo and behold, I was able to secure a house for $90,000 under contract. But of course, I didn't have $90,000. So I assigned it at a real estate investment club meeting. Didn't know what I was doing. So it's pretty funny. I'll try to keep the story short. But I showed up at the closing, and I assigned it for $7,500. So that's what I was going to get. I knew that. But there was somebody else at the closing table. And I said, well, who's this guy? And I came to find out the person I assigned it to reassigned it to somebody else for $100,000. And then the person that ended up buying the property bought it for like $230,000 and then renovated it and sold it. So, one part of me said, Lindsay, well, I'm really happy because I'm making, $15 an hour or whatever. Maybe it was $13 an hour. I forget at the time. So I just made a nice windfall for a 17-year-old. But man, I left a lot of money on the table at the same time. But, the point is that it really got me excited about real estate. And then that's when my career aspirations shifted. And I ended up going into commercial, real estate investment banking for a couple of years. Didn't like that. Then I wanted to get into the deal business because I wanted to do deals. That's what I really was missing. And I wasn't doing pitch books in a back room for 12 hours a day, selling big office properties and resorts and things like that in Puerto Rico. And it wasn't fun, but it was good training. So then I got into office leasing, where I was on the landlord rep side and was representing landlords and doing the 500 square foot cafe at the ground floor, and also working on 100,000 square foot law firm deals on the penthouse. And then ended up getting into residential real estate through my first wife. And anyway, that's a whole separate story. But here I am, and I loved the residential side of it, the deal making, the dealing with egos, the personalities, the entrepreneurial spirit, having to do so many things at one time to manage a real estate, a high-end residential real estate brokerage or broker has a lot of skill sets that they have to really perfect and hone. And I didn't know that at the time. I know it now through a lot of suffering and evolution.
That's so fun, that story. And actually, it's funny, it's a great segue over into sports. But when you mentioned that you went from this paradigm shift of I left all this money on the table. Somebody else did 100,000 where I only did 7. Reminds me of that 4-minute mile, narrative where no, scientists and the general athletic community in the world thought it was impossible to run a 4-minute mile, and then someone did. It was possible until it was impossible until it was possible. And a lot of sports accolades have been that. It's just someone pushing the barrier of what their belief is the human potential is as an athlete. In your estimation, do you think that that you just keep in your career where you are, you keep having these like aha moments, like, oh, I didn't think this big. I keep your horizons keep getting expanded about what's possible with real estate and business. Are you learning that more and more?
There's no doubt. I mean, I have a personal growth mindset. I'm into personal development. I'm always trying to reframe, the quote unquote bad thing that happened into, okay, you know what? I'm not going to go into victimhood and apathy or anger. What I'm going to do is reframe this pretty quickly into, okay, what can I learn? Where's the opportunity? So acceptance into opportunity. And, once you kind of start adopting that framework as one of your mantras in life, then it's all just a game. Everything changes. I mean, of course, serious things happen, and deals blow up that, get you upset. So I'm not saying I don't get upset. What I'm saying is that it used to put me in a funk for 2 weeks. Now, I'm out of it in 2 minutes, or at least the next morning, that kind of thing. And so but we never know what's coming next, and we never know where the opportunity is. And, my foray into, working, probably half my clients are athletes or entertainers, that wasn't something I was looking at. It just so happened because I went to the University of Miami. I was a real estate guy. I was serious. I was going to school in my suit because I had an internship at Merrill Lynch and consulting companies, like I mentioned. But I was also doing real estate. And so as these players in the early 2000s started getting drafted in the first round, second round, they started coming back asking for assistance and for advice. And I realized, hey, there's an opportunity here. I'm going to go after this because I see a lot of realtors using and abusing these guys, whereas I care about this and I want them to succeed. And that's how I got into educating the athletes pretty early on. And that's a whole separate story. But, rather than trying to be their friends and hang out and take advantage of them, it was more, well, I'm happy to do your real estate deals and help you, and let me educate you at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's just always opportunities if we're looking and we slow down enough to see them. But sometimes it's hard in this, especially now, with we're always just go, and we have so many distractions around us.
Gosh, these are some gold nuggets you're saying. This idea of learning to just more quickly bounce back from disappointment and then have this mindset that it's all happening for us instead of to us, and that we, it'll all be used towards our ultimate success. I mean, I've learned this principle, and yet I'm always surprised at how I forget it so quickly. It's like, it's just one of those things where, when you go to the gym or you're an athlete and you're feeling the pain and the burn and you're like, this does not feel good, but then it's the very thing that's making you strong and improving your skill and getting you the results you want. This tension is just the paradox and all of that is so powerful. Can you share any stories that come to mind that are specific about where you learned that, where you're like, this seems an epic failure, or this thing was so painful? It sounds like you've had divorce. So, I mean, for some people, that's one of the most painful things a person can walk through, like worse than death in many ways for people. Maybe you've had some really painful things, but can you share context or give us any insights what you learned through anything like that? That'd be so amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in my, my mid-20s, here I am venturing into this, residential real estate world, leading a really good position in commercial real estate at the time. My parents thought I was crazy. And so, I was making more money at that 26 years old than my dad had ever made as a lawyer in academia. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, you're crazy. I didn't understand that mindset, but I said, I can't do this forever. And I see a huge opportunity here, and this is a lot more fun. And so I've always chased, not chase is the right word necessarily, but I've always gravitated towards growth. And sometimes growth is painful, to your point, Lindsay. And so, I quickly learned around the great financial crisis time, well, I can't sleep. So I started taking, sleeping pills. Then I started moving that up to Xanax on nights that I really need to get a good night's sleep. I'm going to just take some Xanax tonight because I really need to be on for tomorrow. And I said, what am I doing? Like I have major anxiety about, and I would even wake up, and now I know what that is, but in the middle of the night, just whole body tensing up, having like a panic attack. I didn't think I was stressed out, but I was living at such a high level of stress constantly that, I guess when I was sound asleep, my body was showing me, hey, dude, you're under an inordinate amount of high stress. And there were a couple of these, wow, like this is getting serious. I need to figure something out. So I discovered meditation, and lo and behold, that started changing my life. And I didn't need sleeping pills. I threw them all away. And so it's been a long journey for me into personal development and meditation. I do Qigong every day now. So I've evolved a lot of practices, but it's been over 15 years. around the age of 30 is when I discovered this. I read a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that kind of also blew my mind wide open, and I saw life in a whole new way. So, and then even since then, I mean, I've had several bouts of burnout in this industry because I didn't know how to scale my business properly. I didn't understand the use of leverage properly or systems. And I thought I had to do it all myself, because so many of us that are entrepreneurs, we just think, we don't know how to grow and scale a business. We don't learn that in college, but we know how to hustle. And a lot of that is taking the sports analogy of like the discipline, the early mornings, all that energy, and that's great. But sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you start seeking out advice or mentors or learning the hard way. Unfortunately for me, but that's the way my life evolved. My story evolved is I didn't find the mentors. I had to learn it the hard way. And so I did. It took a lot longer in some ways, but that's my story. And I've, when you hit that burnout, it's like you don't want to go back to that. You need to change something drastically. So sometimes when you hit those low points, that's when you realize, like I did for the stress and the lack of sleep. Then in business, a couple of times I had major burnout and said, I'm going to leave this business. I do not want to do real estate anymore. And I say that now in the position of, spending 4 to 5 months away every year in the mountains, in a place that I love. I'm still working, but I have my team executing real estate for me, in South Florida. And so it's just become so enjoyable because I've been able to focus now more on, the 10% of the things that I enjoy the most. And that also I add the most value as far as in my team. We've got a team of people, and, I'm the person that needs to go out and bring in the business. Other people on the sports analogy side are rebounders or doing the assists or really defensive stoppers or, the sixth man or whatever. But, I know my role and understanding that and leaning into it. And it's hard sometimes to unwind all the things that we do, as entrepreneurs to grow our, we think we're growing, but then we realize we're not growing, we're just stagnating. And so it's painful. It involves, dissecting our egos and looking ourselves firmly in the mirror and realizing our deficiencies and asking for help also.
Oh, that's so good, Ben. I love what you're talking about. Again, so many things you're highlighting that I just are so yummy to hear. Like for one, I wanted to mention Qigong. I just recently did it for the first time here in Hawaii with a friend. And another friend and I in Hawaii saw a man on the beach doing Qigong, but we didn't know what it was. And we went up to him, like, what are you doing? And I don't know if there was a language barrier. He was an older gentleman. And he goes, it's kind of like some kind of yoga and karate. It's like how he said it. And we thought that was so funny. But yeah, I basically, the idea of taking energy and then, the realities of energy and molding it and flowing it and utilizing things with your opponent and your body and your space, being incredibly present. Such a powerful thing. I love Eckhart Tolle's philosophies, and meditation has been life-saving for me too. It's just something I'm constantly trying to get better at because I have a hard time quieting the mind. But that's one of the beautiful things is breath work was like an active meditation hack for me, like holotrophic breath work, because
yes.
I could actually get my mind to be quiet through this deep focus. Just so much more demonstrative to do it that way for me. But I love that. So how cool that you learned how to build these systems. How did you finally do that? Like when you're like, I didn't know how, you just realized the pain point was like, I'm going to burn out. This isn't sustainable unless I do. What was the path? Because I think a lot of people, I can relate to that. Like I'm the kind of person that struggles at building systems or whatever. And as an operator, because I am usually the person at the top of the funnel in the sales position, the visionary person, in my roles. So bringing in the funding, bringing the opportunity. How did you find someone who could do that for you? Did you just kind of strength fight or triple down on what you're good at and then find the right partner? Or did you actually go, okay, stop everything. I need to learn this skill. What was your path there? Any advice you have?
Yeah, I think, one thing, I just remember this distinctly. I just said, I'm not going to work on the weekends anymore. I need a break. So I'm going to work Monday through Friday, but I'm just not going to drive myself to the bone on the weekends. And what was interesting is once I let go and eased up and relaxed into what I was doing, which is, real estate brokerage, the deals started coming. So it was almost like an energy flow that I was restricting because I was so wound up and trying to force the action and try to control everything. And so I think a lot of us that are type A's that are, we want to be in business for ourselves and we want to control everything, but, letting go and realizing, it's almost like Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment, Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment. So reading some of these books, less about business, I would say, and more on the personal growth and mindset side that really helped open me up to that. And then seeking out a real estate coach as well. I actually went through a coaching program called IPEC to learn skills, which helped me, at home life, business life, in everything, the way I see the world. So I started adding skills in ways like that, educating myself. And then there's nuggets along the way, like Robert Refkin, our CEO. One of the things that really resonates, one of the mantras that he proclaims is focus on your strengths. And so I really thought about that, and I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to write a list of all the things that I do. And I wrote like 100 something plus things that I do on a pretty regular basis, daily, weekly basis. And then I really focused on, okay, what are the top things that I have to do? That I have to do that, I don't want somebody else to be doing, the things that I had the most value in doing. And so then I started really saying, okay, my goal is to get here so that I can start eliminating all these other things. And so then I realized I need to hire an assistant. And it was painful because I guess I'm cheap. I have, in that way, I just I didn't understand investing in a person. I thought that was a cost. And I realized, no, this is not a cost. This is actually an investment, and I will have a return on this investment. But I didn't get that right away. When I finally did, I hired my first assistant, and that's when everything started really changing. I was able to start moving these things off my plate, and by being more focused and more attentive to where my strengths are, I was able to bring in more business, more than pay for the assistant. Now I have 3 assistants. So, it's just, and I have a team as well. So I have a lot of help. But I've also been to the point of doing everything myself, and you don't want to stay there too long. So it's good to do everything yourself, I think, sometimes to really learn the business, but then you have to start finding a plan and focusing on what your strengths are. So that, Robert's mantra really, really resonated with me, along with a few others, but that's just an example.
That's amazing. That's someone I've also read. The Surrender Experiment was transformative for me. And I actually had a chance to speak with him on my birthday a few years ago, actually speak with Michael Singer.
Wow, how cool.
It was very cool. And I was so grateful because I just sent this cold call email to connect with him. And he's like, yeah, I get endless requests, you can imagine, but I just felt I should take your call. It was like one of those really cool universe moments. I had a beautiful exchange with him. He talked about, I was facing some really difficult things and scary things and hard things in my professional life that seemed like big threats, to my career and my reputation and things. And they ended up not being at all, but I just had tons of anxiety and I didn't know which way it would go. But ultimately, he just said, what an incredible opportunity. He just reframed it. Because as you know, and anybody who's maybe read his book, The Surrender Experiment, he was facing jail time for things that he was not guilty of. And so there was really analogous to some of what I was dealing with. Not that I was facing jail time, but just that, undeserved, unjust potential outcomes around something. And he just was saying, very few people get opportunities to be in extreme situations of pain that are undeserved, and the fruit that can bring was, I'm paraphrasing it, but that was essentially like his framework was just like, look at the gifts in this, and that energy and being positive, like you said. So I love that you said, I started to just set these boundaries, rest. I started, hire different people. However, this is a really sincere question because we hear this a lot. This is a theme in entrepreneurship. It's like balance and take your own oxygen mask and all of these things. But do you think that you had to first hustle and build all that credibility and be the person that's taking all the calls and working all the overtime and doing the weekends and the shifts and things, you know what I mean? The grunt work, if you will, that then earns you the position to be able to do that? Because if you hadn't done all that other, could you, in other words, can a 20-year-old kid out of college have all of the, systems and stuff in place and do it earlier? Can they do it quicker? I mean, where's the tension in that, and love your thoughts about that.
Yeah, it's a really good question because I don't think so. I don't think there's any substitute for hard work. And in my industry, I come across people, there's a guy that wanted to join my team recently and, he's been in the business for 6 or 7 years and there's no production, but he's, all put together, very eloquent, all these things. But the only thing I can think of is behind closed doors, when it counts, he's not making the phone calls. He's not prospecting. He's not doing what he should be doing because there's no reason why somebody who presents in this way is not successful after 6 or 7 years in the business. And so, anyway, that's just one example. But yeah, I do think there's no substitute for hard work, and we have to put that time in. But in my case, I just kept grinding. I didn't pull my head up and scale. And I've seen people that started after me that have built huge businesses and diversified into different things in real estate And, they spent maybe 2 years grinding and then they started hiring. I spent many more years grinding and then I started hiring. So that's why I say I was kind of slow and late to the game in some ways. I wouldn't change it because it is my journey and my history. But I would advise somebody who's starting now to put in the work. Don't be scared of the work. I think the main thing is to maintain your energy along the way, and know that it's temporary. This is not going to be forever. But I do think certainly in real estate brokerage or a lot of other entrepreneurial ventures, starting a business of any kind. I mean, I don't know how you start that. I love Tim Ferriss, but I don't think there's a 4-hour work week for somebody who's starting a business. So yeah, I think
that's super helpful. It's that tension, and it's like, how much is enough, and that put on the gas and then let off the gas and then put on the brakes and then put on the gas, and just that figuring out that rhythm. And it might be different for everybody because there is opportunity. Luck is a part of the journey of success. Like, and anyone who doesn't say it, I think, wow, like that's incredibly self-unaware, because there's a lot of opportunity that comes. There's grace. Like even the breath in our lungs is grace. You know what I mean? So there's grace behind it, and unearned opportunity, as well as there is earned opportunity and hustle. And I think, like Oprah Winfrey said, luck is when preparedness and opportunity meet, at the same time. And so I remember Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, he did some research around being lucky. And they saw that companies that perceive themselves as lucky had, actually, because they believed the opportunities would come for them, were more prepared. Like they did more to actually be prepared. So they worked harder. They didn't just think it just secreted from the universe and dropped in their lap. They actually felt like these opportunities will come, and we have to be completely agile for when they come, we can capitalize, And I love
That's
that.
right.
There was research I saw recently where they, I can't remember, I can't cite the researcher, but they had people, who considered themselves lucky, and then those who didn't, and they had them basically do some kind of exercise. And those who saw themselves as lucky saw things, they saw the world different, and they completed the exercise much quicker because they actually, they were told to count pictures in a newspaper, and they basically, the second page said in big bold font, like, there are 43 pictures in this newspaper, stop now, and all the people who counted themselves not lucky counted every single picture and went through the whole thing, and actually sometimes got it wrong, the number, but they took so much longer to get to the answer. Whereas the people that consider themselves lucky were more open, their aperture there with their view, the way they saw. And so it's like one of those things. It's like, are they lucky? And that's why they, they then saw it, or is it their ability to see things and hold things in its totality that actually creates, this feeling of luck, because there's so many good positive outcomes in their view of the world. I'd love your thoughts on any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I do believe in the law of attraction to a certain extent. I think the energy that you put out is reciprocated. If you wake up angry every day and the glass half full mentality, and like, why me and poor me, and you're gonna have interactions on the street or in the workplace that justify that kind of outlook, and you're not going to attract the people, the high energy, people are going to say, oh, you know what, no thanks, I don't need to be around that. I don't accept your gift of negativity and all that kind of stuff. And on the flip side, if you wake up every morning, the first thing I do every morning, as an example, and this is not the way I am. I think as a lot of men, I was taught to suppress my emotions. I have no emotions. I mean, I used to say I can count the amount of times that I've cried in my life, like they're not very many, like those kind of things. And, just grew up being hard and the athlete mentality. And I was a jock and, all that kind of stuff. Tough and, got in fights as a kid and all these things. Right. But then realizing, no, hold on a second, like empathy and love, connection, these are all skills. I can learn these things. I don't have to be born. I think we're all born with them, but sometimes they're so covered up, and I think as men in particular, that we have to really start to unwind that stuff. And getting back to what I was going to say, Lindsay, so the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, and I've just implanted this into my head, is I put my arms up, put my feet on the ground. I wake up at 5 a.m. So it's dark. My wife is sleeping next to me because I get up before her. Many times I just feel like staying in bed, but I put my feet on the ground on the floor to kind of ground myself. Put my hands up in the air. I took this from Michael Beckwith. I don't know if you know who he is, but and then because it's like a surrender. It's like you energetically, if you put your hands up in the air, it's like you're surrendering, not in a bad way, but you're surrendering to just, hey, I'm just a small little peon on this planet in this great spinning universe. And you know what? So I say to myself, it's an honor and a privilege to live this life. And then I, kind of put my hands at my heart center and I, think about and try to feel and smell, like sense my wife, my kids. And then I'm like, you know what? I get to go to the gym and or do Qigong for the next 2 hours. Like, holy cow, like I'm so lucky. Like, this is amazing. Like I get this personal time. I get to listen to a podcast, an Audible book, and I start just pushing into gratitude and opportunity. And it does frame your entire day. And so then, it's like, but I've woken up many times groggy and, angry and, all those things. It's like, you never know how you're going to wake up, but you can implant into your mindset for that day. And then especially, through doing some inner work or some exercise, releasing endorphins, all these kind of things, not eating a high sugar meal, but like, food and diet, all these things are all important. Like by 7 o'clock, no matter how I woke up feeling at 5 o'clock, like I'm good. I'm consistently good by 7 o'clock and not just good, but like excited and thankful and, all those things. So, I think there's just so much there. And, anyway, I'll stop there because I could just ramble about this stuff. But
no, it's beautiful.
I think mindset
I
and
it.
attracting what we want in is so important. And yeah, of course, like you have to do the work. I think energetically, if you don't do the work, you're not going to get those opportunities. Like luck doesn't just happen when you're not putting good energy out into the universe in the form of, interpersonal relationships, in the form of work that you're doing it for the right reasons. A lot of people get into real estate or sales because I'm going to make a lot of money. And you can, but the most, enjoyable part of it is when you're making money and you're treating people well and you're treating yourself well also. And you're not overworking. And, I know so many realtors that make, millions of dollars a year and they're kind of miserable. And it's like, what's the point of that?
Right.
There's no point in that. So, anyway, that's a few thoughts on that topic.
I love it. You are so, you're so inspirational, just your energy and your presence. And you can see that the great self-actualization efforts you've made are paying off. I mean, your physical fitness, you have a beautiful family, you're having success, but it's the energy. Like you can feel you're just so embodied and present. And it's just such an inspiring thing to see humans thriving like that. Have you had in your, like going back to this, have you had in your personal life, things that have just rocked you to your core where you're like, all of these systems I have in place to protect myself from crumbling, of failing me? Have you had any stories that you can vulnerably share that might help us understand? Because sometimes I think when we see someone as human beings, when we see someone as successful and bright and shiny as you, like you're filled with light, you are articulate, you're kind, you're doing things right, you're high capacity and high character. We really can put that on a pedestal. Are there any parts of you that you can share? You're like, okay, I'm human too. And here's what I've learned when no one's looking and I cried those 1 or 2 times in my life, here's what I learned about being human that could be helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I think certainly the great financial crisis was tough, being in business and just kind of starting in. But I set a realistic expectation for myself. I said, my goal at this time is just to break even. I think it was like 2010. I just want to break even because I bought an office condo that I knew I shouldn't have bought. I had an office copy machine lease that was like, $1,500 a month, all these things just stacking up. And I said, my goal is just to break even. And I think I made like $17,000 that year. So I made, did a little bit better than breaking even. But, my friends, my nickname growing up was TNT because I was the guy that would explode and just rage. And so, I came from a very low starting point in that sense. When I talk about, I did not have empathy, like it was bad, it was let's fight it out instead of, hug it out. That was kind of my approach. And so for me, it hasn't been so much since I've been in the professional world after the great financial crisis, when I got into this business, I've lived below my means. I haven't been overspending. And I think when you're not strapped financially, I think financial stress is the worst kind of stress health stress and relationship stress too, and things like that. But, getting divorced, great financial crisis, all those things kind of happened at the same time for me. I also had a situation with a lender that I had been paying for this office condo. I'd been paying my payments on time. The 5-year loan ended and we were negotiating, and I thought I was negotiating pretty hard. They also had my checking account, which I knew I shouldn't have had my checking account at the same institution where my mortgage was, but I did. I didn't move it. And a
Shoot.
negotiation email that I said, well, maybe I just won't pay the mortgage next month. How do you guys like that? Because they were trying to have me collateralize additional property or put that, pay down the principal balance a little bit more before they refinanced me. And I didn't like those options. So then they just, and I didn't make any money basically for a year and a half. I had finally built up the bank account and they just went in and took it all and paid down the principal.
Oh my God.
And I had checks. I hadn't written myself a check for a year and a half. And I had check for myself and for my ex-wife, my business partner at the time, on my desk. And I had to rip up those checks. And I had to go with my tail between my legs and explain to her what happened. And this was preventable, and I didn't prevent it. And they took a very aggressive stance in the negotiation. They'd never done something that aggressive with somebody who had never missed a mortgage payment in the history of the bank. I later found out, but it was different times. And so I had a lot of things that kind of cascaded on me at one time. And that was one point where I said, I'm just going to move to Montana and work on a ranch like this. There's no reason why I need to put myself through this, Being the nature lover that I am, I said, well, that's got to be better. Yeah, exactly. So that was my first bout of burnout. And, but since then, Lindsay, since I had I reached such a low point, the sleeping pills, all the things that not being able to sleep, all those things, divorce, all those things happening at one time, that I couldn't go any lower necessarily. So then I said, I need to find a new way. And so ever since then, I started building up, and just, I would say it wasn't like all one major thing. It was just stacking, just keep progressing. And there have been periods of stagnation where I wasn't progressing in many ways, I think, from a personal growth standpoint. But, when we play the long game, you realize, man, there's a lot that we can achieve when we just adopt the right mindset and, implanting certain thoughts in our heads, even just like forcing yourself to smile sometimes when you don't feel like it changes your mood, or like to your point, the breathing exercises. And so there's so many things there. And I guess it gets confusing for people because then we think, well, I'm wasting time doing this stuff, or we all want instant gratification, and, meditation is hard. It's not easy. I have so many people that tell me, well, Ben, like, that's great that you meditate, but like, I can't even sit still for 5 minutes. I'm like, that's the whole point.
It is hard.
That's the whole point. Like, yes, my mind races. I bring it back. It goes off. I bring it back. I go, that's what I do for the whole meditation. So the people think they're just going to be in this meditate 1 or 2 times or for a month and just have it all figured out. But, you and I know that's not what happens. And so, but over time you look back and say, wow, there's been a lot of change here as a result.
Yes. It was helpful for me because I have a Christian background, and somebody framed my cousin, who also has a Christian background, but then lived in the Tibetan mountains and became like a monk and like a Buddhist monk, and like just got really deep in the practice of meditation. He said, I like to think of praying as like talking to God, but I like to think of meditation as listening to God. And the quieting of the mind, the power in that is just unbelievable. And it is very difficult for me. I think it's more difficult for me than most people. I was diagnosed at like 39 with ADD, and I have high functioning ADD. And for a lot of women, it doesn't express as children because, straight A's, and I can sit still and I can do the tasks and all the things. But it makes perfect sense because the psychic pain of being like in a dopamine deficit and constantly having to get, 20 tabs in my proverbial brain open to like, and toggling back and forth from the wall. It's been a huge gift, and those are skills that can help me, that have helped me in business, helped me be successful in many ways in my life. And there's superpowers in it. But one of the deep deficit painful parts is the inability to just quiet the mind and just be present, And so I've had to work really hard, but I'm super grateful. I just want to say for anybody listening, breath work, man, for me, with somebody who had ADD, it was such a hack. It was like, it just leapfrogged like probably what I would have thought would have taken me years in meditation practice, because it was so, there's different types. Specifically was holotropic breath work. It's really deep breathing and led by like a mediator that like leads you, or some kind of facilitator. But this, finding these hacks will work for us because things work for different people. Different people have different modalities of spiritual expression or self-actualization or what feels good to them. And we all have to have that be congruent, what serves us best at that time. And the fun part is we can say, this serves me for now. We can choose something new tomorrow.
True. Right? True. Yeah. It's like Jerry, I love the Grateful Dead. So, Jerry Garcia, was it Uncle John's band? He says, when life looks like easy street, there's danger at your door. So like, I just think I figured it all out. And then boom, there you go. Life throws you a curveball. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here to like I never knew Qigong would come into my life in this year. It was March when I started with my private coach, but it came about from a conversation I had at a big dinner in Austin in February of this year. And, what I realized, I'm doing less sit down meditation now than I ever have. Well, since I started meditating, because what I realized is I'm doing a moving meditation now.
Yes.
And so it's different, but I feel more relaxed. And since I love physical fitness, I love to move. I don't love to sit for long periods of time. So the moving meditation has been awesome. It's a physical practice. So like Tai Chi or Qigong, some of those things might be helpful for people that do have, ADD and have a hard time, particularly because, you're focused on what's the progression of the practice. And so you're thinking about, being present to what you're doing, but you also have to be aware of the body movements that come next and the next movement and the next movement. And there's breath work involved in it and some of those things. Yeah. But I never thought I would give up my sitting meditation practice. But to your point, something else came in, and now I'm realizing, this came into my life, and maybe it was serendipity, I don't know, but it came into my life, and I took it. I felt compelled intuitively to find this gentleman's coach that he was talking about, and I did, and it's changed my life. And so I relieved my back pain that I've had for a long time that I thought I would never be able to get rid of, and so in more ways than one. It's maybe stronger in the gym, which is crazy because there's no weights involved, but my squats are, I feel more powerful, better balanced, no pain, and I'm lifting more weight. So it's like, that's weird, it's just, but I think it's so important to be able to adapt and change and flow with what happens. And maybe I won't do Qigong forever, but as of right now, I think I will, but I'm trying to be open to what comes next, because something will.
That openness, that curiosity and that openness for whatever is next is so great, because love will dictate the next move, and trusting ourselves in that exchange is so powerful.
Yeah. So and there's a lot of real estate, like a lot of, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. I
was going to say, so a lot of, because of AI and, COVID first and then AI and everything that's happening, like we have to keep readapting at a much faster clip than ever before. So before it was maybe like blue collar to blue collar adaptation, like you're a horse and buggy driver and now you're a bus driver, but the bus driver isn't going to have a bus to drive anymore because it'll drive itself. But now we're seeing at the white collar level a lot less, let's say, middle managers or financial analysts or realtors or all these things. We're looking at fee compression across the board. And so I think, as an entrepreneur, what I'm thinking of is I'm going to lean more into the humanness that we have. So how can I connect more with people? What you're doing, having a podcast, having these deeper conversations. I love the podcast format, and I thought about doing one for a long time, but I just I haven't done it. But finding ways to connect more with people, personal services. People need more guidance, not less. And so I think that's just something I wanted to mention, because we're all being challenged right now. Even if we think we're not, like, just wait till next year and the challenge will come, or the year after that.
You should totally start a podcast. You're so fascinating, and obviously have a breadth of experience that would be such a gift. And I to me, the reason why the podcast was exciting for us to do is I just love collecting people. I just adore people's stories, and it's just a chance to unabashedly interrogate people, ask them all the questions I want to get this opportunity. So thank you for that. Something I thought about when you talked about, your discipline in your athleticism growing up, and also being a jock, and then of course with Qigong now and meditation and all this. Do you find, because you advise a lot of high performing athletes, you work with them, they're your clients, you're actually in their lives in a really vulnerable way, like at Capital Financial Network, where we manage people's money, and there's a tremendous amount of trust that goes into handing someone your resources and money and saying, I trust you with this. We're very honored to be able to earn that trust and keep that trust with our clients. Have you learned in your experience with these athletes that there's a lot of trepidation? Because what I understand, I've heard a lot of stories that athletes will make a ton of money from their incredible careers, but then they lose a lot of it very quickly. That not understanding business and investing has been like to the huge detriment of a lot of professional athletes. Can you share a little bit about, the unique value and skill set you've offered them and how you've helped them, and any insights about what it's like for them that might be interesting for listeners?
Yeah, so I mentioned early on, I started started doing education for athletes. I got lucky to be able to start doing education for rookies initially for the Miami Dolphins football team. And then I've gone to several different teams and done things with the NFLPA and the University of Miami student athletes in different organizations. So then I wrote a book. I said, you know what? I want to take this to the next level. I only have 45 minutes and we can often just cover one topic. So I just wrote a book called The Real Estate Playbook for Pro Athletes. And I decided to make it a free book because I just want to give it away. Again, energy, doing the right thing, putting good things out into the universe. And I'm just now in the beginning stages of getting that out into the world. So I'm getting that out to some clients. And, I had one of my athlete clients who's become a buddy. He said, man, you're next level. Like you really care. Like you're not just like a typical realtor. I thought that was a nice compliment because there are a lot of realtors that give us bad reputations and that sort of thing.
Yes.
But yeah, I think to your point, Lindsay, like these athletes are making more money now than ever before, including in college. And I think there's a couple of women basketball players in the University of Miami that are making like several $100,000 this year from NIL, from name, image, likeness. And so these kids basically are totally unprepared to make this kind of money. And now it's happening even faster and sooner than it did because they don't even have to go pro. They're becoming influencers in their own right and making a ton of money. And unfortunately, the university system is failing them in many cases because they don't understand how a mortgage amortizes. They don't understand how to work with debt. They don't understand personal finance. They don't understand how to build a network. They don't understand any of these things. I don't know what they're learning in school, but they're not learning any of those things. And so, I've always felt compelled to, with the athletes, even though they have a lot of people around them, those people are a lot of times are just yes men or just, making life easier for them and removing any accountability from their lives.
Right.
Like the fact that the sports agent has these client service advisors, that's great. But because the athlete doesn't have to take any responsibilities, everything's being done for him. Usually it's men that I'm dealing with in that sense. They're not even given the chance to learn. And so then now they're 27, 28, 30 years old. They've had people doing things for them their whole lives if they haven't stepped up to take accountability. And then they think they should know a lot more than they do. So then they are very vulnerable and they don't know what questions to ask. They don't know what they don't know. So they started making, bad investments and, start giving money away. They're not frugal, as because you're in the financial advisory business. Yeah, I've got some, unfortunately, very sad stories from so many athletes and, all pro, NFL football players, NBA basketball players, Major League Baseball players. I mean, and they have no money at the end of it, which is crazy to see.
Yes.
They're just blowing it. So I think there needs to be a systematic change at a much younger age for them. But also, I think for young people in general, because anybody who's graduated from school, I've dealt with many doctors who are very smart in their medical profession, but not very smart when it comes to investments or real estate decisions or how to deal with people in a negotiation. They have got the God complex and they think that they know everything. Well, you may know everything when you're in your medical office, but you don't know a lot in the context of the real world dealing with human emotions and that kind of thing. So it's, I don't think we should treat the other side in this way and then having to play psychologist in some ways to them, which is actually one of the things I like the most about the business that I'm in is just human connection part of real estate. But yeah, so lots of stories, sad stories, and some good stories too on the athlete side.
Oh, I love it. There's so much wisdom in what you just imparted and shared. And so this book that you wrote, can you say the name again and then where we can find it? And if you're not an athlete, would it still be a great utility to you to learn about real estate? I mean, if our listeners
basically it's I put it together more as a resource. And like the first part is getting into mindset, like why real estate and how powerful that can be. Doesn't mean you go out and buy $1 million property as your first property, but start small. And then there's many different rules that I go into from the investment side. So like the 1% rule or the Burr method or some of those things. But so it's really buying, leasing, selling, and investing. That's kind of how I break it down so that if somebody wants to sell their house and they want to understand how to hire a realtor, what questions to ask, they can go right into that chapter and look. If they're on the investment side and they want to learn about, what's a cap rate? How do you calculate a cap rate? There's a whole section about different, formulas and calculations that are, predominant, like a debt coverage ratio, a cap rate, those kind of things. And it kind of explains those things to them. So to answer your question, I think it's not just for athletes, but it could be, for anybody who wants to get started and just understand real estate a little bit better. I think it could work for that. But it's called the real estate, the real estate playbook for pro athletes. So I did define it as a niche market because that's what I'm dealing with, and those are predominantly the young people with money that I'm dealing with. So that's why I kind of targeted for that audience particularly.
And can we get access to it? Is it something that we can find online, or where could a listener find it?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's on Amazon and it's free. So you can download it for free. So yeah, absolutely. If you just type in the Ben Moss. Yeah. So now I'm an author, I can say.
That's amazing. How cool is that, Ben? I'm mindful of the time. I just want to ask maybe one last question. You've got kids. How many kids do you have?
2 kids.
2 kids. Okay. So when you think about, if today was the last day you could impart wisdom with them, what are 1 or 2 things you would want to share with your kids that you would just be like, gosh, this is a capital T truth, an eternal truth that I want to leave with you, because I find that when people answer questions about the people that depend on them most, that they love the most, the most profound things usually come. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that. Kind of a total existential shift.
Yeah. Well, it is. That's a deep question. And I think the way I would answer it would be referring to, I'll say one of my favorite quotes first, because it relates to the, what I would impart upon them. But stop measuring your days by degree of productivity and start experiencing them by degree of presence. And that's an Alan Watts quote. So I'm a big Alan Watts fan. But I think the idea is like, it's like, learn how to be present. Like a lot of other things can be figured out from opportunities. I mean, it's just, that's a whole rabbit hole, but just learn to be more present. So find ways to create stillness in your life. And, life kind of slows down. It's almost like you then starting to become like in the matrix a little bit. You start to kind of feel. So you're using your mind, your intuition, your heart. You're using all of these things now, not just the mind, which a lot of times we're just like, go, go, go. We're not even feeling our bodies. We're not feeling the breath. We're not feeling the intuition. And so I would say the way to kind of the keystone habit to allow those things to flourish, which creates success in life, not just in business, but it's all of it, would be to find more stillness. And to your point earlier, like it might be Qigong for me or meditation for me or exercise, but it might be something else for somebody else. And to give ourselves permission to, play the slow game, play the long game, and really attune to ourselves a little bit more fully to allow the best expression of ourselves to manifest and not just live in potential forever that doesn't get expressed or manifested.
That is such incredible wisdom, and what a beautiful word to end with. Thank you, Ben. And thank you for coming on the show. And you just I literally felt like I just took like a total chill pill. I was like, whoa, that was you did. Very Alan Wattsy of you. Thank you so much for coming on and for the amazing light that you bring in the world. I'm so grateful to know you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Great to connect with you too. Look forward to the next one.
Do you need help with the next steps for your financial plan? Think Capita. Capita is a financial network built around you. They have a team of financial advisors, CPAs, estate attorneys, Medicare providers, and Social Security experts to help you accomplish your financial goals. Call to schedule a complimentary consultation at 801-566-5058 or visit their website at www.capitafinancialnetwork.com. You can also check out their financial education podcast, The Financial Call, available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and YouTube.